Hey everybody, welcome.
Hey guys.
Can you not step on my line? Okay. Hey everybody, welcome back to One More Day. I'm SJ.
And I'm Diva Milay. Hi guys.
Yes, yes. And so we're so excited to bring you guys another episode today. It is been a long time coming to continue these episodes week by week, and we really want to commit to making sure
It's fun.
it's fun, but we do have a 10-month-old baby, so there are some caveats. In fact, she's right in there right now. She's supposed to be sleeping, but pray for us so we can get through this episode.
Yeah.
So
bring a baby to work today.
I know. So as you guys can see in the title, we're talking about conflict and basically arguing. How do we deal with arguments in relationships, especially marriages, new marriages, or even seasoned marriages.
Just arguments, period.
Right. So I guess we can just hop right in. We have a few different things we can touch on with it. I have like some articles, things like that we can bring out, but I'd love to know, Diva Milay. By the way, you look beautiful today.
Thank you. You look handsome.
Oh, thank you.
You look very handsome.
Thank you. So
I'm fighting allergies right now.
Oh yeah.
It's not an argument, guys. I wasn't crying.
So upon, wanting to be married, did you have a certain picture in your mind that the good times were going to be a certain way and then the bad times or the arguments were going to be a certain way? Did you have either an example of that, or did you feel like you knew what it was going to be at all?
I thought everything was just going to be perfect. No arguments. Everyone's always joyful. And I was wrong.
Okay, what's the real answer?
Honestly, before marriage, I have to let you know, you already know this. At a very young age, I learned to have self-control. I used to have I wouldn't say a bad temper, but I easily got upset. Over small little things. I would solve it through fighting. And I'm not talking about verbally. I would give you the choice. Do you want karate or boxing?
Oh, wow.
And at the age of 6 or 7, I would have that kind of mindset.
That's pretty early on.
Yeah. And it was mostly boys in school.
Right.
I think I remember having 2 major fights. And
with boys in school?
With boys. And one was we went on a school trip. We came back. We were arguing which bus arrived back first. And the guy wasn't believing me. I said, our bus. And he was not believing me. I said, do you want to fight? I know.
Church girl from Swaziland
loves Jesus,
Oh, wow.
Yes. Oh, wow.
How many years did that last?
I mean, okay, so to tell you a short story, after I had those 2 fights, one was the guy scratched me on my lip and I had a scar.
Wow.
Do you see it?
Oh, I didn't. You see it, right? I knew she had the scar, ladies and gentlemen, but I don't think about it, is what I'm saying. So you're revisiting the story.
I think I was 7 years old, but I still remember very well.
Okay.
Before moving to the States, I was 8. I remember hearing the Holy Spirit saying, don't do that in America. Don't solve issues.
Oh, so this was all in Eswatini.
This was back home in Eswatini, in a private school. I don't know why I would solve problems just by fighting physically. Thought I was a tough girl.
Yeah.
But I will never forget the day we were announced to move to the States and getting ready to move to America. I heard the Holy Spirit saying, don't do that in America.
Wow, that was a good thing that you took heed, because in America, even though I met you in New Rochelle and that's where you were living, New York in general.
Yeah.
No.
And of course I saw that as soon as I arrived.
You felt it.
I felt it. But, through God's grace, I was able to have self-control with my temper and really understand why would I even solve a problem that way.
Wow.
I loved sports. I did taekwondo. I have brothers I always played fight.
I was gonna say, do you think that was why? Because you have 2 older brothers.
Definitely, that could add into the way I protected myself. Was, you know,
I see.
Have that sort of approach.
Right.
I wasn't a mean person. I didn't bully people. It was just how I responded. It's like, oh, you don't believe me? You're not listening to me? I'll fight you.
Sure.
But in America, that changed. I was, as my song says, be slow to anger.
Oh, right.
I learned to be slow to anger, to listen before I speak. And I practiced that for a very long time. Okay. Now, forward to marriage, I would say when it comes to arguments, I am learning to pick my fights, to pick my arguments.
Well, before you jump into that, let me just give the people a little bit of my backstory with that, since you gave that. I was, and still am in a lot of ways, very non-confrontational as a person. I have always thought of, if you treat others like you want to be treated, that's what you should get. Now, the unfortunate part for me is that I'm not unfortunate part. I'm a man, right? So growing up as a young man, that isn't seen as something that people deem as strong. Having your own mindset, having your own kind of like slow to anger way about you. People will challenge you just for the fact that they can't believe you're not acting like all the rambunctious boys who are fighting all the time. In my household, we were taught, my brother and I, not to fight. In fact, we would get in trouble if we did fight. And in times where we were fighting, Rich, I'm not going to put anything out there about my brother, but I'll just say we have very different ways of handling conflict when we were younger. I think we're much better now, but I only say that to say I could see how even then something I wasn't, I guess, sensitive to is that some people don't handle conflict like I do. And in a lot of ways at the time with my brother, and we'll bring it back to our relationship and marriage in a romantic sense, but with my brother, the biggest lesson,
oops, just hit the mic.
It's all right. The biggest lesson was he is so different that how he internalizes things and you know, got heated about things manifested in a different expression. Okay. Whereas I would manifest it as either a shutdown, a not talk, a walk away.
Like silence treatment?
Silence, or unfortunately at that time, maybe a bit of a aloof, like I don't care at all when I do care. Okay. So I can tell with some people that completely will cause more of, you know, the top of the pot to burst kind of thing. That's the only analogy I could think of. But yeah. So
no, it's interesting you mentioned that because it makes me think the way maybe I solved it physically, physical fighting, was I didn't know how to communicate when something really bothered me. So the quickest way was fight, you know? But after I learned I can't do it that way. Were you
like really into Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter? Why would we fight? Like, I can just see those.
My phrase was, do you want karate or boxing? So Isn't that corny?
You were like...
karate, as if I'm like Chuck Norris or Van Damme. I was ready. I was ready to throw that punch.
You were about that life in New York. We say you're about that life, but I would say it was like you were Chun-Li from, I think that's the Street Fighter name.
I was like Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris?
Chuck
Norris.
Van Damme, MacGyver.
Hey family, if you've been enjoying this podcast today, please be sure to
subscribe and hit that notification button.
Thank you so much for your support. Now back to today's episode.
So after I realized I cannot solve problems, arguments like that, I need to communicate. I'm like the opposite now. If something's wrong, I make sure we communicate it through, whether it's in marriage or friends or family. Yeah. And I think that's definitely been better for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. I remember seeing a few celebrities who would say they never argue in terms of relationships. And I was just like, how admirable is that? That's amazing. Never argue. Now, in my experience from watching my parents, I think everybody has things that they would glean and take from their parents and not take from their parents. How can I put this without getting in trouble?
Yeah, you better think long.
No. I know.
No.
I know for a fact that what I saw in growing up, there are different ways that as a family unit, I think we could have communicated better. And naturally, because your parents raised you, their communication at certain points, maybe from my vantage point, could have been something where it was communicated more verbally. Nothing was physical. Let's not even imply that. But I would say that naturally, a lot of stuff can be resolved without the element of a strong sense of anger because someone angered you, right? I can't speak to my parents' marriage in that way. I can only speak to me as an observer, like, wow, okay, so what do I take from how they resolve it and what don't I take? Because, that's naturally, as our daughter, that's naturally what everyone does. I'm sure they did it with their lives and all that stuff. So we're not incriminating anybody, and you can share about your family too. But it's just, I got to be real. Like it's certain things you take and certain things you don't. And you also know that people, just like your parents, evolve and change, just like we will evolve and change in our marriage.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up, before we talk about like our actual marriage, I wanted to quickly bring up an article that I saw on, what is it on right now? It's on NBC News.
Okay, so it's recent, right?
Is it recent? Let's see if it's recent.
Let's see the date.
3 years.
Okay.
Not so recent.
Not so recent.
But NBC News, probably the principles were the same. I mean, the Bible is thousands of years old. We still live our Bible, right? So on NBC News, it says 6 mistakes you're making when you argue with your partner.
Okay.
Okay, let's see how we fare with these types of things, right? All right, first, mistake number 1, focusing on complaints instead of a solution.
Yeah.
And so a little brief thing, what it says here is an argument likely doesn't occur unless you have some grievance. But in order to make progress, it's best to express your complaint, explain how you're feeling, then move on quickly to the solution. And then something else says, once you're in the problem-solving phase, take a collaborative approach, spend some time brainstorming ways to solve the problem, and don't judge each other's ideas. So how do you feel about that, Diva Mele? Focusing on complaints instead of a solution.
No, that's true. And I think we've practiced that, a lot. For example, I've learned when I have an argument or disagreement with you, I would ask you, how do you think I could have asked that or should have mentioned that?
You do ask me that a lot.
Yeah. And when you express it, I hope it would have been like this or sounded. It makes sense. It helps, because you get into an argument because of misunderstanding.
Absolutely.
So if you use the same energy to ask, how did you hear this? Or how could you have liked hearing it? It just solves the problem, right? And then you move on. And you understand
really
the
good.
Person more.
Right. And I do
better.
appreciate that you asked me that, because then it doesn't go straight into, I can't believe you're offended about that. I can't believe you didn't like that. It's just like, well.
Or what did I say?
Are we checking each other's pulse? Or are we just trying to be right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that would lend itself to a constant conflict of not only who's got to be right, are you my enemy or my partner? Like, what's going on? We don't want to be at odds. We want to find a middle ground.
Yeah.
Good.
So that's one way I would say we try to find a solution when there's misunderstanding. Now, if there is a situation where you could have done or said something, but you say you didn't, and I'm for sure, I know that you did that or you said it, I think we're still working on it.
You'll be more adamant about like making sure you understand that I'm deflecting to the point where it's like not taking accountability for actually the fact that I said this or did this.
Yeah,
I can see us still working through that, because sometimes no one's perfect. Just like I said, I was giving my parents an example and all these different things, but for me, a lot of the times when you reiterate something that you said I said, or sing that you observed that I did, in the moment, I might not even remember it the same way.
Of course, yeah.
And then you'll be like, no, that's what happened. But there's it's too many moments where I'm just like, Divan, you like, no, it was you who left it in your bag. It was you who put it on the couch. The tone that you gave me made no sense, because that wallet or that card was in your bag. Why am I with the accusatory tone coming out of your mouth saying, where did you put it? It's like, but it was in your bag.
But what I love about you with that, you don't get into that panic mode with me when that's happening.
I cannot do that. No way.
We're the opposite. If I'm panicking, he's usually calm and chilled, which is absolutely. So good, which is so important.
Yeah,
for
we
us.
can't be both all the way turned up. Like,
no.
Who wants to be all the way turned up? That's not helpful to anybody.
Yeah.
No.
So if it happens with couples, if just one of you try not to be turned up, or else turned up.
Turnt. TURNT. All right.
Because it doesn't bring a solution.
No.
Probably what you're panicking about, you wouldn't find it as quick, or you wouldn't solve it as quickly if you're both panicking. Right?
Yeah. Both panicking is a no-no. Let me go to mistake number 2.
Go ahead.
Using hyperbolic terms like always and never. You know how I feel about that. Now, I'm not going to keep on incriminating my family. I'll just talk about us, but I know this all too well. So it says a statement like you always do this or you never do that isn't just dramatic, it's likely untrue, says, I guess they're speaking about the doctor who subscribed these things. It also puts the other person on the defensive, and instead of listening to what you have to say, they'll focus on coming up with examples that negate your false statement. Instead, she says to use moderating words like sometimes, at times, and often. I'll stop there. Yeah.
I'm just nodding like,
I agree. And I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not that person who says always. If I make that mistake, sure. Not perfect, but a lot of the times I'll approach it in a way where it's like, I would like for you to stop doing that way, as opposed to you always do it this way.
Yeah.
Because always is so accusatory. It's as if like there's never a point.
And who's counting, right? Why it makes it sound like,
just watch this.
Like I'm always hitting the mic right now.
Yeah. Just watch this entire process. But
never heard you say you always hit the mic.
No, because.
And I always do, but never. But
guys, once again, I will repeat, not perfect. But there's a lot that I've experienced with all dynamics of relationships that people, I will say, have accused me of being a certain way. And then when I examine my behavior, I'm like, were any of the qualities of when we were good redeemable enough for you not to accuse me to be this way? I remember some person, this is a bit of a tangent, some person who was upset with me about a situation where there was a rumor that they say we were fired from a job, and I had spoken to somebody who was close to them, and instead of that person keeping the information in confidence, they sent the message directly back to the other person. That wasn't meant for them, right?
Okay.
So I thought I was just having a regular conversation. That person then said, "You're vindictive, you're conniving," and I'm like, interesting, because the very time I could have been vindictive and conniving would have been a time where the situation could have sabotaged you completely, and I could have thrown you completely under the bus, but I was always diplomatic about it. And I knew from my core what my intentions were. But to use the word vindictive, I always tell you, like,
How long have you known this person?
Not a long time, but the problem is that it was in the realm of embarrassment for them. So they felt that the best way to get back at me was to throw, hyperbolic insults.
I was going to say,
and
sometimes in arguments, whether in marriage or friendship, relationship, you sometimes use words that trigger you a certain way.
Absolutely.
Or maybe you've been waiting to use those words towards someone.
Right.
Just to get them back.
Right.
We always talk about that. Like, when we're arguing, why does it sound like you're just trying to get me back?
Right. That whole tit for tat is really doesn't have a place for marriage. You don't want the pettiness to overcome the solution oriented.
And what's wrong with finding solution? But
absolutely.
Obviously, the other part of you,
what?
That's not the Holy Spirit.
Oh no,
the
no,
flesh
no.
doesn't like solutions.
No.
Yeah.
And listen, like there's an enemy who is waiting for your marriage to crumble, your covenant to be completely eradicated. So why not put that wrench of dissension in every situation and scenario to say, this person always does that. Why did I choose that person? Because see that like angel demon kind of thing you see in the movies, that's a real thing in our lives, because we're constantly making the choice to be like, or uplift, edify, speak life, don't have to be right. That type of rhetoric doesn't help anybody to constantly be at somebody's throat. Like, and the way that they present it in media is as if people are, I remember I would totally give my mother this credit. She doesn't like when people say ball and chain. Neither one of my parents do, because that is, let me look it up.
What does it mean, ball and chain?
Let me see. Okay, good. I have another thing. So ball and chain.
That's something you heard growing up, or?
It's a term. I don't know if you hear it a lot in Eswatini or here in Taiwan, but the ball and chain meaning, where people say, "Oh, they all ball and chain."
All ball and chain.
I mean, not a lot of people are saying it, the newer generation, but the old term means, so ball and chain, a heavy metal ball secured by a chain to the leg of a prisoner to prevent escape, used to convey the idea of someone or something that is crippling encumbrance. So basically, your spouse, your ball and chain is encumbering you, is holding you down, is weighing you down. But that's not a nice thing to say.
So you mean your parents didn't like hearing couples
Well,
talk
the
to
example
each other
my mother gave me a while ago was she was in, I guess, some sort of business scenario. It was a business colleague, and he referred to his wife as the old ball and chain, right?
Yeah, no.
And she was just like stoic about it, like, I don't subscribe to that. And I took, Mom, I take from you, right? I'm taking from that marital example, like, even in times where you're just in a conversation with someone casually, sticking to your principles and the statutes of your marriage as it is seen under God needs to be the thing that is constant for you. Because if your spouse is not in the room and you're like, oh, ball and chain, ha 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 ha, you're affirming that attitude. And then what seeds are planted when someone thinks that you think like them and your spouse walks into the room and your spouse is here, they're going to start seeing you different. They're going to see you like they see themselves.
Yeah.
And that's not how you view it.
No.
You view it like, I want to edify. I want to consistently uplift and affirm my spouse in a positive way, and not like everything is, gotta bring Diva Mile. Diva Mile again.
You constantly have to cover your spouse. Like SJ mentioned, we're not perfect.
No.
But you always have to think, how do you protect and cover each other in this marriage, in front of other people, in front of each other, your children. I mean, I cannot say, I do not remember a time where my parents argued in front of us.
Oh, wow.
Never.
What?
Never. I cannot tell you even one time. I know they probably did. They're humans. They had misunderstanding. But there wasn't a time where they were showing disagreement in front of the kids.
That's interesting.
There could be little things like, honey, did you put the keys there? No, I put it there. That kind of.
That is not my testimony.
But there wasn't a conversation where their kids are sitting in their corner like, our parents arguing right now.
Oh my goodness.
Or there's crickets. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, and I know I was giving examples of my family before. I don't remember seeing the arguments direct. I just know that you hear your parents argue maybe in another room, right? But I think it's easy to say you don't argue with certain couples and then try to compare contrast, which was not what we're doing, right? But I think that everyone has had the moment where if you're living in a household with siblings and other people who are governing over you, they're not always going to get along.
Of course.
And so, you know, your parents, my parents, no one's unique to that kind of conflict. I guess it's right. And I think it's just different varying levels of how well they might hide it, because no one gets along 24/7 every 7 days a week.
And it's okay to have an argument with your spouse, as long as at the end of the argument you're still an ally.
Yes,
ally to each other,
that's
right?
good. That's good.
If you argue with your siblings and you've known them for 30-something years, of course, with your
oh
husband.
My goodness,
you know.
yeah, exactly. And I love that. You know, you mentioned siblings, and I love that now. Even my brother and I, we get along swimmingly because we're not trying to get in each other's way. There's nothing that would cause us to be like, we can't find a solution here. And I feel like that's same with my parents. You know, but parents will always be parents, right? So you're always trying to assert like, I got this, mom and dad, but it is what it is. You embrace that and move on. All right. So we have a few more.
Yeah.
And you can hear Lilac in the back. Sorry.
She's
it is what it is.
Mom, Dad,
right?
hurry
She's like,
up.
Right. Okay. So number 3. Yeah.
Yeah, we can go.
Mistake number 3, using you instead of I statements. Let me read what that says. Making you statements also puts the other person on the defensive. For example, saying you ruined or you made me. And then the rest of this says I statements such as I feel frustrated or I need. These statements allow you to express how you are feeling within the situation. Doesn't put blame on the other person and puts the focus on you.
Yeah. You said the keyword blame. I have to say, for the first time in marriage, I experienced this word you would say all the time, which is my fault.
Absolutely.
You know, and
because it is.
you weren't necessarily saying it's your fault, Ivamila, but I could hear this word fault as if every time you bring it up, someone should be blamed, you know? I didn't understand where that came from, to the point where I would say to you, honey, no one's blaming anyone. Why do you have to bring that up? Why do you have to say that word?
Can I ask you a question? Was I usually saying it in the context, I'm not excusing the behavior or the sentiments, but would I say it in the context of, well, that's not my fault? Would I say it like that, or would I say it's your fault? I don't remember. Well, how would I say it?
You wouldn't say either way, but it would sound, when you say that word, it was if someone is being blamed.
I think what was happening was I felt blamed because I couldn't control the situation, the outcome, and it was an outcome that wasn't so great. So because I'm such a fixer and because I'm trying to always make things perfect, something that went awry in my presence that could potentially be something that I could have made better, to then talk about it in a way that it just didn't pan out feels to me at times like, well, SJ, why didn't you make that happen? Why didn't you make that great?
Yeah.
Why didn't you save the day? And I've tried to learn day by day, because perfectionism can be like a gift and a curse. Day by day, like some stuff is out of my control. A lot of stuff is. To kind of take on that blame every single time is such a heavy burden to carry that I shouldn't have to carry.
No, it's heavy.
It's a load that you don't have to bear.
Yeah. Tighter than what you're wearing right now on you. And it's good
you tried
that
it.
Good thing we talked about that word, because it made us understand where it was actually coming from.
Yeah.
Sometimes arguments in marriage, it probably has nothing to do with your partner, but it's things that you're bringing in that you haven't dealt with.
Right.
And just an open conversation really starts to solve the problem.
Amen to that. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let me we only have 6, so let's get to number 4.
Okay,
Mistake number 4, waiting to speak instead of actively listening. This is a preach. This is the word.
Blessed are those who are quick to listen. Blessed are those who are slow to speak.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's
slow
true.
To speak.
Right. So this says, it's in our very nature to want to respond and defend. And this reaction is heightened when fighting. What often happens is that we are so heated in an argument, we latch onto one word or phrase and begin to develop our defense without hearing it, the entirety of what the other person is saying. When then responded to a portion of what was said and miss the majority of the content, the just perpetuates and escalates the argument.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, this is my daily life. Not with you, but this is my daily life.
It's okay,
with.
you can be honest.
No. I definitely feel like a lot of issues with anyone comes from not being a good listener.
Yeah.
We just went through a situation where this person was just not hearing my heart and interpreted it in a way that was just like absolutely not the character of who I am. And I couldn't figure it out why, but I think that's because the person wanted to hear what they wanted to hear as well. They just wanted to hear what they wanted to hear. And if you're steadfast in that in a marriage, I don't know how your marriage can last because it's then all about you.
And sometimes it could be very tricky because in a marriage or friendship, but because we're talking about marriage, your mind can allow you to believe that's how the person is. You just create a narrative.
Yes, and you convince yourself,
and you
right?
convince yourself that it is what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing. It's really like that.
And once again,
and you avoid talking about it and knowing the person's heart.
Precisely.
And growing in marriage.
And then not taking into account all the redeeming qualities and attributes the person already has. You're going straight to the feeling, the emotion in the moment, and I'm thinking, well, why did I fall in love with you? Why did I choose you? Why did you choose me? What was the thing that got us together? And I think that a lot of people, if they sat and thought about that, it wouldn't be hindsight so much that they just broke it all off, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Mistake number 5. Taking short breaths. Now I have to read this one because I don't know what that means. Okay.
Please.
Taking short breaths activates your fight, flight, or freeze system in your body, which activates the sympathetic nervous system and prepares you to fight or escape instead of think rationally. Take deep breaths, which restores the blood flow from your sympathetic nervous system and places it back in your brain, thus allowing you to think more clearly and engage in the disagreement with a level head.
Yeah. So it talks about your cortisol, talks about your estrogen. You have to make sure that is aligned. Not one is more extreme. So the deep breath really helps. I recognize there's a time where you would walk away in situations that made you feel upset. And that may look like you are dismissing or dismissive, but that's one way to, I need to take a breath. I need to take a deep breath before I can revisit this situation. But moving away from this situation can really help you see it differently. Yeah.
Speaking of mistake number 6. Mistake number 6 is walking away without a positive ending. Now, we'll discuss, but even if you've made some progress during your argument, it's hard to shake off all of that emotion. Taking time apart to cool off further is ideal, but it's still important to end on a positive note, not storm away.
Yeah.
Wrap up the argument with something encouraging that acknowledges something good the person did in the process. For example, I appreciate you listening to my concerns today. Or, I'm grateful we have an open communication line so I can honestly express my feelings. And then the end of this says, sometimes sealing it with a hug or a handshake is enough too. Whatever the approach, the other person will appreciate that you put in the effort or expressing gratitude and honoring your relationship in the middle of a disagreement, even if you need to pick it back up later, at a later date to reach a complete resolution.
Yeah. Especially in marriage.
Especially.
I'm saying it's especially in marriage because you're married.
Yeah.
Forever, right?
And ever.
Will stay. Okay.
Stay in my heart and I will love you. All right.
But I'm saying that because in relationships or acquaintances or friendships, there could be a room for manipulation, for control, where you've invested time that you didn't have to.
Yeah. Time you can't get back.
Time you can get back.
That's right.
And you don't have a covenant with those people or that person. But in marriage, it's so important to take that time.
Yeah,
but to reconcile.
Yeah, I agree. I love how this article wraps up in saying just seal it with something positive, because yes, I am a walk-awayer, and not so recently in our marriage. I think that a lot of times I would walk away in different scenarios where we'll get into another podcast, but they had very little to do with you. They had to do with how I could control my own internal combustion. A lot of times for me, walking away would just allow me to really regather my thoughts so that I couldn't have this kind of very aggressive anger in the scenario, because overall it wouldn't be good for multiple parties. And usually, especially in a case like that, I'm walking away because I don't need to embarrass myself, my family name, my reputation, my precedent, all those things I'm considering. And that's, I think that's why I was different than you in school. One thing I prided myself in school was I'll never get suspended. Never get suspended.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you were too, but I was specific on, like, I know if you fight, I know if you cuss, all those different things in your classroom, you can get suspended. And
which is why God said don't do that in America, because they really look at, you get punished for
quickly. You don't in Eswatini?
No, I mean, I was young, but I never got it suspended for having an argument.
Do they have suspension in Eswatini?
They do. There is punishment. If not, you get a stick on your hand.
So see, they still did corporal punishment where they still hit you.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother podcast, but yeah. So what do you think overall? What would you give us? I'm just asking her this live. What kind of grade would you give us now from the beginning of our relationship till now, as far as how we handle arguments?
I would say
on a scale of 1 to 10.
Scale of 1 to 10 from then to now, I would say we're about an 8.
Okay, that's pretty high.
You don't walk away. I've only witnessed you walk away twice. And you're right. It had nothing to do with
nothing to do with you, so it don't even count.
As your wife, I was able to understand my husband why he walks away and make sure he doesn't do that in public, but because you want to protect and cover your husband. So when I sensed something like this wanted to happen, we would have like a code of like, okay, there goes the enemy,
right? Yeah, and we don't just say there goes the enemy. We can recognize it, but I think we've been through enough in these last almost 3 years of marriage, 3 years next March, where because of COVID, because of different scenarios, because of non-conventional way of getting together, things have been thrown at us in a very non-conventional way. We're in a natural habitat, maybe even where I'm used to being in control of it wholeheartedly. Language, places to go. There would be ways that I can completely avoid anything where you wouldn't feel a thing. You know, maybe it would just be more like, oh, well, we're experiencing this because we're new to marriage and we're trying to mesh two worlds. But I would be so intentional, which I'm trying to be here, about how to make you not have to deal with any of that dissension so we don't have to argue. But I think that a lot of it is just circumstantial. And it's kind of like we're navigating together. So why even spend the time to argue? Which is why we keep on saying we're not perfect, but we find it way more, what is the word I'm looking for? Productive to find solution-oriented ways to handle things that don't need to be an argument. You know what I'm saying? So,
and we talk to each other's heart. That helps us a lot. Not to just conclude on argument. We go right into what is your heart trying to say right now? And it's helped us.
And I think what's also helped us is we've had too many bananas people around us that we're just like, we don't have time to argue with each other. Too many people out here are bananas. We're just like
okay,
what am I arguing with you for? I think we good. I think you and I, we at least have some sense, some rationale, but we thank you
for
guys
another podcast.
Absolutely. We thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to tend to our beautiful daughter right now. She is way past her bedtime. But we wanted to bring you guys another episode this week. Check out all of our other videos. Please help us to bring more subscribers to the channel by sharing the videos, liking, and commenting. We'd love to really converse with you guys more inside the chat. Pin your comments. We've been enjoying
your comments, by the way.
Yes. Follow us on Instagram at OMD Studios and follow our respective channels, SJTV. And what's your YouTube channel?
I have 3. No, I have 1. Diva Mile.
Right. And on those channels, you'll be able to experience us differently as actors, as singers, entertainers, whatever we're doing. It's not centrally going to be on this channel, but you'll see remnants of it. But we thank you guys so much again for tuning in, and see you next time on One More Day. Bye-bye.